Hi, I'm Jase Smith, co-founder of Mind Your Business. The Mind Your Business programs were developed after years of research into founder well-being, and what we found was that you can't treat the founder and the business as separate entities. What you need to do is adopt a more holistic approach and almost look at them both as one and the same thing. In this episode, we're going to look at how founders measure success and set themselves targets, because it's important that those targets are realistic, achievable, and we understand what success actually looks like for ourselves.
Hello and welcome to the Founders Matter podcast, the podcast where we talk openly about what it really means to build a business on your own terms. In this episode, Kat and I explore why founders must use KPIs that reflect what truly brings value, direction, control, and worth. So, Kat, you've had one of the most eclectic and impressive career journeys of anyone I know, jumping from teaching to construction to the NHS and digital change. So when you look at founders today, in terms of the way they understand progress in their life and change in their lives, right? Because you've done it a few times. What do you think stands out in the way they appreciate progress and success in life?
Different people have a different idea of what success is. So in every project that I've ever been in, every different stakeholder, every person involved has a different idea of what success looks like. If a founder decides what their success looks like, they have more control and freedom to decide what they think success is. However, what we often find is that people forget that and don't use it. And they will use a hand-me-down of what they've been given before in their other jobs of what success should look like.
So why do you think that so many founders rely on what they've been told? So the KPIs they feel they should care about rather than the ones that really, really reflect what really matters to them.
Cradle to grave. Let's really think about how industrialized people are. So people are industrialized right from when they start school because they need to fit within boxes that fit the government's KPIs of curriculum to keep them working in a way that fills and fuels the machine of the world rather than being themselves and actually bringing what they value and what others will value from them to what they do. If it doesn't fit within a neat box and you can't tick it and you can't quote it once a year in a political spin speech, then it doesn't go in the curriculum, which is absolutely atrocious. Put into boxes and chopped up into nice, neat little squares at school, and then you move to work and they do exactly the same thing because it's easier to manage someone who's in a box than it is someone who has bits flying all over the place. And then what happens when you're a founder is you will subconsciously, as well as consciously, carry all of those things within you. You'll be running from this system that you know doesn't work for you. So you have the freedom from it. But there's a big transition that needs to happen in a person when they have a business into freedom too. So you know that you don't like the way that was set up, but it's really interesting seeing how much of a big leap it is then for people to decide, okay, what do I actually want it to look like then? And it be different.
So what are the risks when people manage themselves with KPIs that they don't really reflect what they value? And what are the consequences of that?
If you manage your performance and you reflect on how well you are doing in your business, using a measure that doesn't actually make you feel like a valuable human being, you will have a disconnect and a mismatch. So if your KPIs are based on what you should, as a business owner, be measuring for your investors or for people who you need to quote figures to be able to get a funding application through, or people who need to see something for an award application. It's okay to have those measurables for those particular people, but if you use them for judging yourself internally on your own performance, you will never be happy and you'll never be achieving what you set your business up to achieve in the first place. So Pablo, it's part of when you developed the Mind Your Business course, one of the key parts of it is you talking about your friend who measures his performance in smiles. He knows with his social enterprise company that if it actually makes someone happy and makes their life better, he has achieved his job. However, that unfortunately is not what investors want to see. So you've got to kind of keep two sets of books.
So every time I give my daughter a piece of advice, her answer is easier said than done.
That sounds a bit like conversations we have, Pablo.
Yeah. So if a founder come and asks you, well, where do I start? Right? How do I know what I actually value in my business, and where should I start?
So it is different for everyone. Everyone values different things to spend their time, their money, and their effort on, and what they want to be known for as bringing their legacy to the world. However, there are things that you can do to get yourself along that path. So there's different tests that you can take to answer questions that find out your values. We, with Mind Your Business, use the VIA ones, VIA. There's all sorts of different things that you can do to decide what it is that actually matters to you as a person. And then work your way out from there so that you can reflect on things that happen in your daily life. So, for example, what I value and what you value are different, but they're on a similar theme. And so what happens is when we're having discussions about what to do next with the business or whatever it is that we're doing, we will both have a similar goal of we want more people to feel better about their lives each day. However, we go about it in a very different way because of the way things that we bring and the things that we want to see. So if you can be reflective of every day, every interaction you have with someone and every interaction you have with yourself, when you don't want to do something for your business or you do want to, or something you don't want to do for your personal life or you do, what is causing that? What value is behind that? What value is driving it forward and you really want it? And what value do you not value very much that's actually something that you would rather someone else handle or that you don't think is as important as something else that you get from it?
It's amazing. I mean, once you understand who you are, what you value in life, it gives you a higher sense of awareness of where you stand in the world. But then you enter a space where it's like the vision without action is hallucination. So the movement to action is what actually, it's not what actually matters, right? So it's a good starting point, but as long as you move to action, that's where you get things going. So I can only imagine that one of the things that listeners will want to take away from this is, well, where do I start? How do I move from, if that's a start, so how do I then move to action? So how can I design KPIs that actually match what brings value, and how do you help people translate their values into measurable practices and indicators?
One of the things that we do with our course is get people to plan their business the opposite way around to the way that they're taught to do it. All through school, all through your career, and through investment, all sorts of different elements of running a business, it's widely accepted that you look at the what first. So all of the goals of measurables of your business before you look at the why. When you do that, you come up with measurables and KPIs that other people want to see or other people say you should be looking for, rather than the ones that actually fuel your soul and make you want to get up in the morning and want to do a good job. So by flipping that around and actually deciding on what goals you have personally as a human being in your whole life, and then, okay, well, how would that look if I felt like that? And then you look at your business goals as well as the why of what you actually want to achieve. For example, for me, freedom. I want to feel freedom. I want to feel variety. I want to feel growth. I always want to be learning. And then you can build out from there, from that why, how that actually looks and how you can put something in place to move that along. And then your goals can come from there. And then I love the exercise that we have. It's so simple, but so amazing, that classifies your to-do list. If you just write down everything that you need to do in one particular day, it's always going to be huge. Every person's going to have a huge to-do list if you just write down everything. You can't be carrying that around all day and think that you're going to get all of that done. It's just not possible. No, it's not sustainable. What we do is we just take that to-do list and we just reclassify it into various different frameworks to help you sort out which things are actually valuable to you as a person and also valuable to you, your business as well. Which things will move the needle, which things will actually are things that need to be done, and which things are on your list that, quite frankly, don't really need to be.
Help us then visualize a small business running or setting up their KPIs in alignment with their values. How does it look like? For example, for a founder who's juggling with all the challenges, juggling with everything really.
Your entire business will be modelled operationally on a holistic model. Let me give you an example of where I've seen a large organisation do this incorrectly. So I know someone who worked for a very, very large British organisation. So their values are about really good customer service. As a customer, I would see that as being answer the phone quickly, deal with my inquiry fully and get it resolved and are helpful. Not how quickly they resolve it and how quickly they get me off the phone. The KPIs that they set up to monitor the people who were actually delivering the customer service were all about how quickly the phone calls ended, which meant that the person who was working there saw that people would have to ring in a few times because the people who were good at the system and kept on getting promoted were the people who would just fob someone off and say that they couldn't do something, or they'd just send them to somebody else and it would chop off. But the person who I knew who was working there would make sure it got done, and the customer therefore was getting the service that the values of the company dictated and went for and was inspired by, but he was constantly on a performance plan because he didn't hit the KPIs. And there's that disconnect between what you say you're about and what you really are about, and what you measure to decide if you're actually providing that. And if you just transfer that to a founder who has more control over their company because it's going to be smaller and it's going to be less bureaucratic, hopefully. What are you actually measuring for your performance to see that you have done a good job? If you are measuring KPIs that are outcomes that you don't have any control over, it's going to feel stressful because you're measuring after the fact. You're not measuring the things that you're doing in the middle. If you are measuring what you actually have control over in the middle, brilliant, because that's where you actually can make a difference. But are you measuring what you're supposed to be measuring of data, of numbers of this and numbers of that? Or are you taking note of the fact that So Jason gave a really good example. So he was doing a talk and he had feedback from hundreds and hundreds of people. And they were all giving, numbers of, oh, the facilitator was very good at this and thank you very much, Jason. Now, ordinarily, people would be looking for that data. There's a few hundred ways of people saying in a number, oh, yes, your facilitation or your training was great, thank you very much. But the one that he picked up on was the person who said, oh, I now know that I need to go and book an appointment to check on this. And that was where he took his KPI from. And that's what keeps you getting up in the morning.
So there's a kind of a big moments of like a realization moments. And it's like, aha, like I now discovered something different about myself and my business. And in this case, in terms of KPIs, right? So how do you help them get to the point where they realize that there's something, I don't know if it's inherently wrong, right? But something that they might appreciate that is not working for them, and they realize that they have to change. How do you help them get to that point? Because we know the consequences, right? So it's their emotional and their business related consequences if you don't do that. So we know that performance decreases, and you know that how that harms emotionally the individual. So I guess taking the individual to the point where they realize that there's something that doesn't work, that needs to change. But I guess going back like that, easier said than done, right? So how do you bring them to the point of realization?
So this is why the Mind Your Business program is so full. There's lots of resources out there, and there's lots of really good advice out there for short, small things that you can do each day to relieve your stress or to act on certain things that are feeling sticky in your business operations. However, if you don't look at everything all together and then dissect it all separately and then bring it all back together again in the end, you don't have all of that realization. If you don't give yourself the space to really look at everything bit by bit by bit, and then each week realize, this from a month ago fits with this, and now I see why that's not happening with that. And then you keep on revisiting, you bring it all together and then have it all together as one. That's where you get the real impact. And I know that with your research, impact is the key driver for you. You can either have something that helps for a bit or helps you get over a specific task or competence that you need to get done. But really, if you want to have a full-on reset or a full change, you've got to go into everything and rummage around in your own stuff, nice and calmly, nice and gently, but also objectively through everything, and then put it all back together again.
So it's always challenging. I'm with you on that. But it's that tension between calm and need to take time to make decisions and reflect. So we talk about reflection with Jase as well. So then the importance of self-reflection. There are tensions between that future and the long future, right? And there are things that you can do that are much more transformative, that we know that they have a long-term effect. But we ended up in a running the which is something that you have to do anyways, right? So running the business that day by only focusing on measuring the things that matter today, without paying attention on what might be happening tomorrow. It's much more difficult to assess or evaluate transformation than it is to bump some seats, right? So it's a difficult sell if you think it that way.
So from my experience in project management though, people, when there's change and transformation, people want to measure that outcome at the end. And you can measure behaviour change. So if you've got a large organisation like the NHS and you're measuring the whole process towards getting to the end of a change, you can measure what change happens in everybody's behaviour that goes into, through and out of each cog along the way very easily. I mean, but it's not a graph. That's the problem, because it's not something that can be put into a spreadsheet and given as part of a financial assessment to the government. Then it's not used. But that is what I had to use every day to know that what I was doing was working, because that was what actually needed to change and the thing that I had control over. And with a founder, they have the people who they manage and also people who they contract in, so that they have to check that behaviour change all the way through. But let's be honest, it's you that's the problem normally. And it's normally your brain thinking about things in a certain way that's the main problem there. So if you can track your behaviour change in each part of a process for how your business runs, then that's the biggest indicator of how you're transforming and how success is evolving.
I guess when you've seen that, I guess there emotions that change and journeys that change. I shouldn't be doing this, right? So there are psychological changes as well. So what happens when a founder starts measuring success in a way that actually matches who they are?
We have tissues out at every session because people cry, because things move, and your business is you, and you are your business, and your self-worth as a human being is wrapped up in everything that you do. So it's hard work, that asking people to really look inwards on these things and really be clear with themselves about how things are for them and for others. So you get tears, you get joy, loads of uncontrollable laughter when people realise that the things that annoy them are the things that annoy everybody who has a business, and it's not them being ridiculous, it's actually just life is ridiculous. You get people going quiet sometimes as well, and you realise they're really just figuring something out, and then later on they'll come up to you and say, I realise that this is what was causing this over here, and it's all just the same problem. And now I know to do it this way. We've had a lot of people who've set up businesses before, and this could be their second, third, fourth or fifth business. You hear stories that you can feel, these traumatic experiences that people have had where they've gone in and things looked successful from the outside, but because they were providing the KPIs, the indicators that other people said they should be providing for in their business, they weren't happy and they felt awful and didn't want to go to work, didn't want to continue doing it, and had to end it because it just was not sustainable, because it wasn't providing what they wanted it to provide and what they're good at providing. It provided what someone else wanted it to provide, who was investing, basically. Seeing them do this course and saying things like, this is what I wish I'd had before I set up the other one, or this is what I wish I'd had when I started. And also, we get some people as well coming on who they're really pleased with themselves, that what they get from this is just confirmation that actually the way I am going about this is the way that works for me. So because they've done it a few times, they've already released those shackles that people can have at the beginning, thinking that they need to run their business in a way that matches the narrative that comes from society and support, etc. They do things the way that they want to do things, and by coming on the course, they realise that actually the way that they know is the way they want to do things is the viable, correct way, not the way that they've been told for their whole lives is the correct way, and actually is misinformed.
When you reflect on values, that requires like deep emotional engagement. Right? It takes some time. And every time you engage in reflection and then sometimes where you realize that it was you who was getting in the way, it's tough, right? It's emotionally tough. And especially as you're starting up this process of connecting your value to your business and to what you measure, I guess it requires a constant reflection, right? Okay, am I doing this in alignment with my values? If that's emotional engagement, I can only imagine that it's really, really tough to do that daily. There's a point that that's natural, right? That you can get a sense that your actions don't match your values, and then you do something to correct that. But when at the beginning of the journey, I can only imagine that it's extremely hard to do because again, the emotional engagement that requires. So, what are the things that founders can do, right? As they're changing to make sure in a daily basis that their actions align with their actions and indicators align with their values.
I have something on my wall, which is just an A3 load of circles, which I use as a bit of a target, really. In the middle is what I want to feel today. And that is, they are the values, reasons why I set my business. So you've got freedom, you've got variety, you've got control. Basically, they're the three key ones. And then the next layer out from there is, okay, so what would help me feel free? A certain amount of money that I've put on there that allows me to buy a camper van with my boyfriend so we can go wherever we want, whenever we want with our dog. A certain amount for a house so that I can live in a way that I want to live in my own space. For variety, it could be that I am invited to do certain things or I do lots of different projects within my businesses. From that, every time you look at something that you feel you need to do today, you just look back at that and go, is that actually in line with that? Is this something that's going to move me towards my why I get up in the morning? If so, yes. And you know, look, you have to do things that you don't want to do. You still have to write emails. You still have to do your accounts. You can still have to do all this stuff. But if you can see that the reason why you're doing your receipts is because that helps you buy your camper van for your boyfriend and your dog, or the reason why you're doing your LinkedIn content creation is because that helps people understand what you're about and then ask you to do really cool stuff in different countries, then that's fine. There's two parts to it. It's about making sure your brain understands the why of why you're doing what it is that you need to do today, but also double checking if what you're doing today does actually match your why, or if it is a should that is a hangover from where you've been before.
Well, I guess you've gone through the process yourself,
Yes.
doing all of this, and change is difficult. So what gave you confidence to abandon traditional success metrics, because it's difficult, right? So what do you tell people if your success metrics don't align with expectations?
So I haven't abandoned them. I just bring them out at different points.
Okay.
So, for example, there are a lot of things that I know from stakeholder management that different people want to hear different things to know that you're successful. So there are certain people who I will list off all the countries that we're working with the business. There are certain people who I will list off percentage growth, whatever. Because to them, that is important for whatever metrics it is that their system they work within. When I talk to myself, I think about, what do I actually want to get from today for me? If I spoke like that to other people, they probably wouldn't get it. Unless if they were part of my close-knit community of people who understand how big a behaviour change is in me. So, for example, with my business coach, she does keep you accountable for the measures of revenue, profit, growth, etc., because that is what keeps food on the table, and you need to make sure that you actually achieve along the way of what you do. But the biggest things that are milestones are when something has gone wrong, or I've something has happened that a year ago would have thrown me right off kilter and it would have made me really upset, or I'd have been worried about it for ages, or I would have felt anxious about what to do about it. And then I tell her that it's happened, and then I go, I'm not really that bothered about it. And that is the biggest milestone I think that can ever happen for me. Different people will have different things that are a big shift for them. I have always found it very tricky to regulate my emotions. And that's why I have been good at the jobs that I've done, but also those jobs have taken their toll on me personally because I found it tricky to learn how to do. And now I'm getting much better at that. I will never be fully good at that, but now I'm getting better at it. They're the kind of indicators that show that I am a happier person and therefore will be more successful.
So, Kat, today we explore why KPIs must connect to values rather than external pressures, and how founders can go about changing and doing that. So, what final message would you like founders to take away about building a business on metrics that genuinely add value to their life and work?
The key aha moments that I've seen people have on this topic is the realization that they are in control. They can choose what's important and no one else matters. You'll have to tell people stuff in certain ways because you'll need their help with something, but it doesn't actually matter. What matters to you is what matters to your business, and be unapologetically happy and focused on creating and measuring that for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right. So your job is to understand how to work with KPIs so they reflect what truly brings value, direction, control, and worth. And so check out the show notes for theories that we discuss in this episode. You also find a PDF with activities to think through and how to set up KPIs for yourself and your company. You can also sign up to the Get Our Check-in emails, where you will receive weekly questions and information that follows and expand on the topics covered in this podcast. So thanks for listening. See you next time.